Dear guests, welcome back to the channel. Today, let us talk about two supplementary procedures with first starting an engine with an air start unit and then performing a cross bleed start for the second engine. Normally, we will need an air start ground unit if our APU is not available for an engine start. APU bleed is used for starting an engine. In this case, if APU is not available, pull out the FCOM and read the supplementary procedure. Okay, before connecting the air start unit, switch off pack 1 and pack 2. We want to prevent contamination of the packs by the air start unit. APU bleed off. Engine 1 bleed off. Engine 2 bleed off. Cross bleed set to open. Now request the ground crew to connect the air start unit. When cleared to start, start engine number 2. Now if you want, you can also start engine number 1. In this case, check the brake accumulator pressure prior to engine start. Make sure starter air supply pressure is minimum of 30 psi when the start valve is open. After the engine 2 is started, external power check it's on available. Request to disconnect the external power now that you have engine supplying the electrical power. Make sure the external power push button is set to avail before disconnecting. If it is set to on and the external power is disconnected, the ground crew might get injured. You can start both engines using the air start unit, but let us start engine number 1 using bleed from engine number 2. For that, order the air start unit to be disconnected. Cross bleed push button to auto. Remember that cross bleed selector must be set to auto before the selection of packs and bleed. We want to prevent the increase of ground idle of the engine number 2. This is for neo powered aircrafts. Pack 1 on, pack 2 on, engine 2 bleed on, and now we apply the cross bleed engine start. It is important to take note of two things. Number 1, do not perform a cross bleed start during pushback, and number 2, do not use engine bleed and external pneumatic power supply at the same time. So before the second engine start, APU bleed off. In this case, it makes sense to do a cross bleed start when you don't have APU bleed. Engine bleed of the supplying engine on, and engine bleed of the receiving engine off. The bleed valve of the receiving engine is closed to avoid reverse flow leakage. When you are cleared to start, make sure the area is clear because you are going to increase power of the supplying engine. Cross bleed set to open. Adjust the thrust levers of the supplying engine to give you a bleed pressure of 30 psi before starting and at least 25 psi during the start sequence. And then start the engine. Do note that sometimes the FedEx may perform an automatic dry crank before the start of the engine, and it usually lasts up to 1 minute. After the engine has started, thrust levers to idle, cross bleed set to auto. Switch on engine 1 bleed, pack 1 on, pack 2 on, and then you are good to go.